All right, so welcome back. We're going to look at the most powerful tool in Gravit and any design program, and that's called the pen tool. So I've got Gravit up. I'm going to go ahead and create myself a new artboard. We'll zoom in a little bit. So the pen tool, which is up here, looks like an old ink fountain pen, or in this case in Gravit, they call it the path tool, okay, or pen tool. Um, It is by far the most powerful tool that any design program has to build complex shapes and designs. So let's look a little bit about how it works. So when I clicked on the pen tool, I obviously get some appearance settings. I'm going to go ahead and increase this border to a 3 just to make it a little easier to see when we start doing work. So you notice my tool now is this pen nib, the nib being the end of a pen, okay? And I'm just going to left click and release. So a single left click and a release. And now what there is there's this anchor point, the square anchor point. And as I move my mouse, it gives me a line. And it gives me this empty anchor point. You notice this one over here is solid blue. This one by the mouse point right now is empty white. So that means that it's loose. It hasn't yet been set. And it's just creating a straight line between these two anchor points. So what's the difference between this and the line tool? Well, the difference is that when I left click and release, I draw my line, but when I move my mouse, you'll notice it keeps drawing. So the line tool the line tool lets you just draw a single line from point to point. The pen tool, on the other hand, actually is like putting your pen down and starting to draw and leaving your pen down. Every time you click and add an anchor point or a turn or a stopping point, the pen is still there. So I can keep clicking to draw a complex shape however I need to. And when I come back, if I come back to my original starting point, you'll notice it sort of highlights as I get close. If I put this over it and click, well, now suddenly I don't have a continued line because it recognizes that I have completed a single shape. So now this single shape can be filled with color. You can change the border styles, the corner joints, whatever you want to do to it. Okay. You can play with it and explore what you can actually change about it. You can change how the line sits on that axis. You can make it have a dashed line, whatever you want to. It creates a solid object. So that's one thing you can do with it. It creates these shapes in one fell swoop. So that's kind of neat. But the pen tool really shines because it's actually a tool designed to make something called a Bezier curve. Bezier curve. Okay. And so a Bezier curve is a curve defined by mathematics. Okay. You don't have to know any of the math, but that's what's causing it. So I'm going to grab my pen tool again. And this time, instead of clicking and releasing on my second point, I'm going to click and hold my left mouse key. So right now, I'm holding down my left mouse button while I'm here, and I'm going to start moving my mouse. And you'll notice as I move my mouse, I'm creating these different bars with little circles on the end. These are called handles. So I'm going to go ahead and just quit right there. So I've created this. And what I've done is I've gone back in, I've used my sub-select or my direct selection tool to select just this anchor point. And I get these two, which are called handles. So the handles are what modify how the line approaches an anchor point. So in this case, the line comes around and it tries to match this handle as it approaches this anchor point. If I drag this down, for example, excuse me, I added an extra point on accident. For example, if I drag this over so that it's pointed right at the original anchor point, I get a straight line. If I drag it this way, you'll notice that the line attempts to enter the anchor point from this piece, okay? So these handles can be used to manipulate an entire shape. So in this case, I'm going to click, and then I'm going to click and drag, and then I'm going to click and drag again. So now what we have is a line with 3 anchor points. And a couple of things I want to point out. Number one, the first anchor point is square because I clicked and released. Okay, that means that this one does not have handles. It is just going to automatically go in whatever direction the rest of the line pulls it at. My second one has 2 handles, okay, which can affect either one. And you'll notice as I move one handle, it moves the other, okay, for the angle, but I can pull it in and out individually. My last anchor point has just one handle because it doesn't go on from the initial point. Now, as I pull something closer or farther away from the anchor point, it's kind of like how hard is it trying to match that angle? Okay, the closer I am, it tries less and less hard. It's kind of like pulling real lightly against our line versus yanking it really hard. If I pull this anchor point way away, it's pulling really hard trying to get the line to line up with that handle. Okay. So what's really nice about these is that you can manipulate these handles individually when you create the line. So I'm going to jump back up here to my path and I'm going to sort of start the same way, a solid click, click and drag. But now, before I release my tool, I'm going to press the Alt key on my keyboard. And now when I move my mouse, you'll notice I'm only moving one of the handles. Okay, this handle is now unique and independent from the others. So if I let go, my new line, you'll notice, tries to match this. So this lets you create different pieces in different ways. And it lets you create a sharp turn as needed. Okay, so this shape is built with the same pen tool, but the anchor points, instead of being straight across from each other as they are here, where they're straight across, now the anchor points are, in this case, at roughly a 90-degree angle. Same thing over here. Okay, but it allows you to create these 90-degree turns to create complex shapes all in one piece. So this Alt option is what you use to manipulate the angle at which the line moves. So once again, if you look at this line tries to follow each handle. So it comes in on that handle, goes out on the opposite handle. Same thing happens here. It tries to come in on one handle and it tries to go out on the other. This allows you to create independent curves that move separately. And you'll notice when I come grab this handle, it starts manipulating just that one side. Same thing here. Versus this one, if I come in and I grab this piece, you never know what it's going to do because it's going to grab both edges at once. Now, as we look through it, if you come over here to your appearance panel, there are some different options. Okay, so there is a straight joint, which would convert this to a square access point. Okay, so now I don't have handles at all. The second option is mirrored, which is what we had originally. So our handles are the same length and they both affect each other. If I decide, well, I need this one to change and I didn't use the Alt key when I first clicked on it, I can come over here and there's a disconnected. Now I can manipulate these individually, just like we had. And the last option is this one, the asymmetric. Now they're locked into a straight line, but you can manipulate each handle's length independently. When they are mirrored, the lengths change together. So again, it's 4 different ways that you can look at how these anchor points are connected with the pen tool. And so the pen tool itself can create incredibly complex shapes as you build. So these Bezier curves allow you to do a few different things. For example, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to make myself a perfect circle. Excuse me, that's not what I wanted. I actually want to make myself a perfect rectangle because I want to show you how the pen tool can be used to create something like a circle, a perfect circle. So I'm going to come in, I'm going to lock this rectangle because I just want to use it as a piece of information, basically a spot. And I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to put some guides out because the guides are actually what I care about. They're what I'm going to use to build myself a perfect circle using the pen tool. So I've got my perfect square based on guides. And so I'm going to come up and grab my pen tool. And I'm going to come along and I'm going to find some point in here that I want to start at. So for example, I'm going to grab this point and I'm going to click and drag as I go. And then when I release, I'm going to come down here to about the middle again, and I'm going to click and drag. And I'm going to try and duplicate that as best I can all the way around. You notice when I get there, it allows me to line everything up. Whoops. And so obviously when I clicked, I accidentally clicked and dragged. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and make that a mirrored one again. And I can come down and I can manipulate this however I want to get myself a circle. So obviously that's not the world's greatest circle, especially not when you can grab the ellipse tool and make one perfect. Okay. But it shows you that you can do a lot of things with these designs if you choose to. So for example, you can go ahead and build a complex shape. For example, let's do something fairly simplistic, but still complex. So let's start with drawing, for example, a plane. So let's say I'm going to draw a plane. And so in order to do that, we're going to bring up a sample that we're going to use as our base. So for our sample image, we're just going to use this plane. We're just going to set it off to the side so we can sort of keep an eye on it. I'm going to go ahead and shrink it down. This is just basically what we're going to duplicate using the pen tool real quick. So I'm going to pick a point to start at, and I'm going to start, say, right there. So if I click and drag, I'm thinking ahead. So I'm going to go ahead and create this 90-degree turn. Comes on up. And we can maybe curve that back down. Now you notice I made a mistake there, and that's fine. We can fix that later on. So again, I'm going to come out. Now in this case, I don't have to do anything fancy. I can just draw. Now here I'm going to curve it slightly again at the back. Okay. And you'll notice I'm not even really worrying so much about, am I matching it perfectly? Absolutely not. Okay. Right now I'm just thinking about how are these angles between each point going to work. So I've built this basic shape, and you can see it's not the world's greatest drawing. We're doing this real fast, but I can come back in and say, well, this one's slightly curved. I need to straighten that out. That works. I can come up here and say, well, this isn't quite right. I need to modify this. I need to turn this into a disconnected joint so that I can change the tip of the plane. Down here, maybe, well, this didn't quite work out the way I want, so I'm going to line this one up a little better. Okay. And I can take these individual points and move them however I want. You know, given some more time and a little more patience, we could easily make this a much better image. But the point is, this is one single path that I can instantly go ahead and fill with a color. I don't have to worry about joining paths or connecting path outlines. But these curves let you build stuff in depth, essentially. So you can design these shapes that are incredibly complex that you can then layer and mix together with groups to create very powerful images. And so the Bezier Curve tool is going to be the absolute most important tool you can learn because it's the same basic tool in all of our different design programs. So the last thing I want to show you is that the Bezier tool also has the ability to snap lines to 45-degree angles. So if I click and move my mouse, obviously as I'm just moving back and forth, it allows me to move my line. If I hold down the Shift key, you'll notice instantly it jumped to a horizontal line. And as I move my mouse out, if I move my mouse up and down a little, or in and out, it just stays this straight, perfect line. If I move up, eventually it decides I'm closer to a 45-degree angle and it snaps the line to it. And I can go all the way around my shape in that same way. and it will only snap to those 45 degrees. And that's by holding down the Shift key on your keyboard. Now, what's really neat is that if I come in here and I start drawing a line again, and now I press the Shift key, you'll notice that it is snapping that line to 45 degrees. Okay. So again, it is a way to manipulate your shape into creating a perfect line. And this can be combined with the Alt key, create, again, complex designs that shift in unique ways such that they can build these complex shapes. So the big thing to remember is that the Bezier curve is the power tool. It is what you will use 9 times out of 10 if you're making anything other than a basic shape. Okay, and this tool is going to be what you're going to practice with the most. There's actually a really fun online game we're going to do to explore it called the Bezier Curve game that really helps to show you all the outlines that you can build using the pen tool once you get comfortable with it. So that's the basics of the pen tool. And once again, we're going to practice with this, and it is going to become second nature to your work.